That has people asking, what is a year of your life worth? Right now, the answer appears to be $60,000. It's how much wrongfully accused imprisoned inmates would be paid for each year they're locked up under a bill heading to the State House.
Yeah, it is more than wrongfully convicted prisoners in Michigan currently get, which is nothing. We're joined now by State Representative Stephanie Chang, who is sponsoring the bill, and State Senator Steve Bita, who is also backing it. Thank you both so much for being with us. Stephanie, I want to start with you if we can. No one would argue that this is a travesty if someone is wrongly convicted of a crime. Talk about your push for compensation and why you want to see that.
Absolutely, and thank you for having us both here today. So Senator Bita has actually been working on this issue for over a decade now. I'm in my first term, and this was something that I'm very passionate about, having interacted with a number of exonerees here in Michigan who were innocent of the crimes that they spent years in prison for. And so what this is trying to accomplish, House Bill 4536, is really to make sure that we are righting our wrongs. We're helping people get back on their feet after they're exonerated and clear in their name cleared of the crimes that they did not commit. So this bill would actually make sure that folks get that $60,000 for every year that they spent in prison when they are released, and they would file a claim with the court. And it's just such an important thing to make sure that we are trying to do justice for the folks who we have wronged as a state.
All right, we'll talk about some of those people in a second. First of all, Senator Bita, it cost about, I think, $35,000 to keep somebody locked up in the state of Michigan. So how did lawmakers come up with $60,000 to keep them unlocked?
Well, that's a good question. I have been working on this legislation. This is, I think, the 6th time I've introduced it. And what we did is we looked at what other states do. This is not unique. About 30 other states, the federal government, the District of Columbia, they all have a system of compensation to compensate innocent people who've been wrongfully convicted and incarcerated. And the number that we came up with is basically an average of what the other states and the federal government has. Some states have as high as 80,000. That's the state of Texas. But we thought in removing this legislation and trying to understand some of the resistance sometimes is concern about cost, to keep it in the ballpark that was reasonable. We thought the average level of compensation was reasonable.
Senator Bita, you said this is the 6th time you have introduced this. What has the pushback been? I think everyone could agree that someone has deserved something if they have been wrongfully convicted and locked up.
That's a good question. Part of it is sometimes it takes people a little while to realize that sometimes the system, as good as the system is, it sometimes does screw up. And you might get 1 or 2 people that were innocent, and they're horror stories once you realize that it actually happened. And we've had a number of cases where people have been exonerated, and you know, when you're looking back, playing the armchair quarterback, and you start to dissect the case, you see that, well, it was a horrific miscarriage of justice, and somebody innocent paid for it with many years of their lives.
Representative Chang, I want you to come in right now. We're not talking about necessarily huge numbers. It's a drop in the bucket in the big picture, but since the 80s, there have been 55 people who have been released after being exonerated. So first of all, it's not a really big number we're talking, but second of all, what about those people? Would you retroactively reimburse them?
Yeah, so this bill would actually make sure that assuming that we were able to get this through the legislature this session, that after the enactment date, there would be a period of 3 years where those who over the past decades have been exonerated and are still alive and haven't already filed a lawsuit and gotten a judgment would be eligible to apply. And then they would be able to do so within 3 years. And so then after that, if for any other exonerations that happen after we hopefully get this bill passed and signed into law, that they would also then have up until 3 years after their exoneration date to be able to apply.
All right, we want to thank State Representative Stephanie Chang, State Senator Steve Bita. Please keep us posted on Bill 4536 and let us know what happens with it.